Russell went to Madison Square Garden last week to the Roger Waters This Is Not a Drill concert. So, Russell, you can quarterback this segment. Let me know when you want me to play some video.
This was a really interesting concert. For some background, if you're not like a big Pink Floyd fan, Waters lost both his father and his grandfather to war. His grandfather died in World War I. His father died in World War II when he was 5 months old. Really, the Wall album is when you start to see this anti-war sentiment, that he has very strong anti-war feelings. A lot of that album is him working through the emotions and the trauma of the loss of his father in that war, and a warning about fascism. He develops this kind of fantasy fascist party, the Hammer Party with the crossed hammers, and it's just really, The Wall is just a work of genius. And watching this concert where he was really, there were a few things going on here. On the one hand, look, he's 78 years old. This is probably his last rodeo, and it felt that way. It felt like he was taking a victory lap. He was saying goodbye. He was, I've seen pretty much every tour he's done since he left Pink Floyd, going back to his first solo album. He's never really gotten this personal. He's trained as an architect. That's why the Pink Floyd sets and the stage shows have always been such a feature of their performances. And he continued that with his own shows. And with this show, it's architecturally impressive, as you'll see in the video. But starting with the final Pink Floyd album, the final cut, he really went full on into international geopolitics. In fact, that's part of what caused the breakup of the band, because David Gilmour, his writing partner, the guitarist, really didn't want things to go in that direction. He really didn't like the album. They mostly recorded separately. Things got so bitter between them. Sadly, even in their dotage, they're still fighting about access to the Pink Floyd Facebook page. Like they were never able to resolve this. But he made a big turn into really discussing those things. The Final Cut album was partly inspired by, he was very angry about Thatcher sending the Navy to intercede in the Falkland War. It seems to have triggered him. And a lot of that album is basically accusing Thatcher and the Conservatives and the Tories, just basically the post-war government, of betraying what he calls repeatedly in the album the post-war dream. And, paints a picture. Remember, this is the early 80s. You're coming off a very bad economy in the 70s and early 80s. So it's very much about a deindustrialized England. The school teacher, who's such a central character, abusing the protagonist in The Wall, has 3 songs about him, basically as being somebody whose mind was shattered by World War II, and that's why he's so abusive towards the children. So it's a very, very interesting album. But from that point on, really, he's been a very, very committed and outspoken activist in a very global way. He's been one of the few who is really willing to take unpopular stands, the kinds of stands that don't get you invited by the Queen with Elton John to get a knighthood, that,
right,
like supporting BDS,
exactly,
speaking out against the Yemeni genocide. He speaks out about the things that, if you want to be invited to the big fashion shows, you don't talk about things like that. He's so many of these pop stars and rock stars of that generation. Elton John is a prime example. Not that Elton John ever really stood for anything. He was just a very good pop artist. But so many of them have just gotten folded into this whole corporate capitalist intersection of fashion and brands and just selling crap to consumers. Like, so many of them just got absorbed into that. And I don't see Mick Jagger walking around taking a stand about anything. I don't see any of these guys I don't even see Bob Dylan doing that. I don't see any of these people doing that. Like there are very few of that. What boycott Joe Rogan? That's their big fucking politics of the
right. Yeah, exactly.
Musicians from that generation.
Well,
I don't
even
know.
that fits perfectly into what you were just talking about. Just mainstream, liberal, corporate friendly, capitalist friendly. Yeah, we'll play Live Aid to support the environment, whatever.
Right.
Rainbow logos here, there, whatever. But no, very few people are the real deal in the way that Waters is. There's no doubt about that. Should we go to your video? This is shot by Russell himself. Some original Do Dissidents cinematography here. Hold on, let me set the move.
Exclusive footage, they call it in the biz.
I'm going to pull the lights down. And let's give this a look here.
If you're one of those, I love Pink Floyd, but I can't stand Roger's politics, people, you might do well to fuck off to the bar right now. All in all, it's just another brick in the wall.
What is that? What is that Twitter scroll reference to?
This was tweets about the Supreme Court after the Roe decision came down.
Got it.
Yeah, the other thing about nuclear weapons is that they're completely useless. They're absolutely no good as any kind of a defensive weapon. They're incredibly expensive, and we could use that money for, I don't know, education, baby formula, helping the homeless, looking after people who are a little bit worse off themselves, that sort of thing. Instead of throwing it into the pockets of whoever it is who owns the armaments industry in this country and other countries. It's not just the United States of America. There's a huge arms industry in Russia as well. Okay, so I'm not just picking on the United States of America. Shall I stop now? Yeah, okay, I will.
I'll tell you, for 78, he sounds very good, and he does 2 sets, as I understand. It's a long night of music.
He still sounds really good, especially for that age.
Yeah, and Pink Floyd music, I mean, they were one of the, I mean, they're arguably the most successful art rock band ever. I mean, that's serious music. Those are serious compositions there. You don't just go up there and croon Sinatra shit, for 3 hours. Like, it's hard. It's complex, it's interesting.
Right.
So he looks great, but
that's something that struck me, actually. I mean, it was a politics show, but on a musical level, I was talking to somebody today, and I'm not trying to single her out, but this is a big part of why I can't get into any music now. Like, how am I going to listen to Megan Thee Stallion when I came up on that? It's this jazz influenced, very complex compositions that travel, that don't just stay in one place for the entire song. It's not just a hook, a beat, and an in and an out. It's a real composition. I can't listen to this shit now. And I mean, this isn't just an older thing. They've done scientific studies on this. Music now is much more repetitive than it used to be, because it just became corporatized. They they applied the logic of the television jingle to pop music. Okay, get a hook in there.
Right, you get a hook.
It's going to make them come back, and that's it. There's no art to it. There's no complexity to it.
Well, sometimes there's art to it. I'm a sucker for a good song. I still like a song. I listen to a ton of music. So, but I would agree. I mean, Pink Floyd, they're a very special band in the sense that, like, a lot of their song, like, you wouldn't even really call them a song band so much as a sound band and a sort of project band, a theme band. Like The Wall.
Those were all concept albums.
Right, those were concept albums, right. I mean, Dark Side of the Moon, you have like a song like Money, that's a catchy, hit tune. But even that, it's 6.5 minutes. It's got this extended jam with the sax solo and everything. It's just, it's great stuff. And obviously, Roger Waters is a major anti-war activist, which is very relevant. You saw that section there about nuclear weapons.
He's on a hit list. He made the Wall of Honor. There's a far-right Ukrainian group that runs a website that has literally thousands of names of people that they've listed as enemies of Ukraine. And some of these people have been murdered. They doxed them. They put their addresses up. They put their phone numbers up. After he did that Smerconish interview, they added Waters to the hit list. Waters actually replied at the beginning of this war to a 13-year-old Ukrainian fan, a 19-year-old Ukrainian fan who sent him a letter. And he basically said that. He responded to her very, kindly. She was talking about the horrors of being in Ukraine and being under this situation. But his answer to her is, and I quote, "I regret that Western governments are fueling the fire that will destroy your beautiful country by pouring arms into Ukraine instead of engaging in the diplomacy that will be necessary to stop the slaughter. Rest assured, if all our leaders don't turn down the rhetoric and engage in diplomatic negotiations, there will be precious little of Ukraine left when the fighting is over. A long, drawn-out insurgency in Ukraine would be great for the gangster hawks in Washington. It's what they dream of, playing the game as they do, with the bravery of being out of range," which is one of his lyrics. "I desperately hope your president is not a gangster too, and that he will do what is best for his people and demand of the Americans that they come to the table. Sadly, however, many world leaders are gangsters, and my disgust for political gangsters did not start last week with Putin." So he nailed it.
Please clap.